Hi, Noah Bombard, managing producer with MassLive. We're here with Senator Eric Lesser at the MassLive office. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Noah.
And we were going to talk a little bit about high-speed rail, which I know has been a passion of yours, particularly for Western Mass. But first off, when we talk about high-speed rail, and we've had readers comment on this before, like, define high speed? What's a high-speed rail?
Yeah, so what we're really talking about is higher speed. Right now, it takes about 3 hours to go from Boston to Springfield via rail. There's only one train a day, and it has about a 75% on-time rate, which means 1 out of 4 times it's not on time at all, and you're late. So it's basically unusable. What the research really shows, and what our work has really shown, is that with some relatively modest infrastructure improvements, we can have regular trains going at regular intervals all day long at 70, 80, even 90 miles an hour. Now keep in mind, if it goes 70 miles an hour with limited stops, no traffic, point to point, you can be to Boston in basically 90 minutes. Our goal is Springfield to Boston in 90 minutes or less. And if you think about that will be a tremendous savings for us, because right now by car, if you have absolutely no traffic, absolutely no hiccups, it takes about 90 minutes. But we all know that's never the case. So the goal in the beginning is 90 minutes.
You say modest improvements. How modest are these? I mean, we're talking about a different kind of train running on rails that weren't necessarily built for. What do we have to do, particularly in Western Mass, to get that line to put a higher speed train on there?
So great question. So there's actually multiple studies all happening right now around this area, and the bill I have before the legislature would require really some more focused research on just the 55 miles between Worcester and Springfield where there's no regular service right now. Here's a few things that have to happen. First, the single most expensive item is right-of-way for the tracks.
Right. We
have that already. There's already a right-of-way. So what we need to do is we need to get access to those tracks for passenger service. The model we have to work off of is what happened between Worcester and Boston.
With CSX.
Exactly. So the first thing that needs to happen is we need to set up a sharing agreement with CSX, the freight operator, to get passenger rail running on that track. There's a template for how to do this because it was already done for Worcester to Boston. Yeah. The second thing we have to do is, you're right, we do need to make some infrastructure improvements along the way. For example, double tracking in certain places so that the passenger train can go around the freight train, improving some of the signal crossings and improving and kind of sturdying up the rail. Now, this infrastructure could be much, much more.
Have there been, we've seen estimates in the past of, I think we're looking at what, 650 million in infrastructure for 10 new trains from, does that sound right, or has that been updated?
That sounds higher than what we've initially looked at. I mean, right now we don't have a good sense, which is why the bill that I put forward is for a feasibility study on exactly this. We have a lot of kind of back of the envelope estimates, but what we really need to do is we need to zero in again on those 55 miles between Worcester and Springfield and see what improvements need to be made, where the double tracking would go, where the signal increases need to go. And I'll just give a comment on that, because right now, a lot of the debate around transportation financing in Massachusetts is centered on a 4-mile extension of the Green Line in Somerville. Now, that 4-mile extension, they are now estimating, will be well over $1 billion, even over $2 billion. Some estimates have it as close to $4 billion for a 4-mile extension of track. Now, that may or may not be a worthy project. We can discuss that another day, but what we have on our hands is a political challenge rather than an infrastructure or logistics challenge, because even the most aggressive estimates for how much East-West Rail would cost pale in comparison to that 4-mile extension project. So we need to make an argument as a legislature, as elected leaders, as a population here in Western Mass that, you know what, a 55-mile project that would transform the economy for an entire region deserves the attention and the focus of Beacon Hill.
But you get a bit of an up-road battle, don't you? Because now you're talking kind of the classic Western Mass versus the interests of the Boston hub area, and this has been talked about for a while. What is it about right now that makes this relevant? Why are you pushing for this?
Yeah.
Why should we do this now?
Well, there's a few things. There's a lot of things that are making it very relevant right now. A couple of things. One, Union Station is going to be opening at the end of this year. Transformational project. You know, that's been in the works for decades, and that will really do a lot to reestablish Springfield as a rail and transportation hub. You know, part of the reason the Armory was put here, part of the reason why our economy flourished here for so long was we were the crossroads of New England. Standing, you know, right in between Boston and New York, and in between New York and Vermont and Canada. We need to reestablish that. We need to reestablish that nexus. A few other things that make this very relevant right now. We have north-south rail service that's been restarted, and actually just next year, a lot of people don't know this, but Connecticut is going to be running regular commuter rail service from New Haven to Hartford to Springfield. You're going to be able to take a commuter line from Springfield's Union Station right here all the way down to New Haven, connect from there to New York. So we're seeing a lot happening in this space. There's also a broader initiative going on right now called the Northern New England Intercity Rail Initiative.
And this is part of a nationwide, really, effort
exactly.
in terms of rail, right?
And it's a little bit of a mouthful, but in, you know, kind of in the quick sort of Cliff Notes version of what this is it's a collaboration between the federal government and the New England states to reestablish the 470-mile rail corridor from Boston to Springfield down to New York, and from Boston to Springfield up to Montreal. Mm-hmm. And think about how exciting that is, because what that would mean is it would be, again, reestablishing Springfield as the nexus
right.
for commercial traffic in New England, and that will create a lot of new opportunities
now,
for us.
You've mentioned in the past and pointed out, rightfully so, that at one point rail connected much of the state. You know, small towns even had train depots you could hop on, go from a train. A lot has changed since that age in terms of our turn toward automobiles as our main form of transportation, the interstate system. How do you make an argument that we need trains when in fact we've got the Mass Pike, we've got the interstate system, you can hop in your car, yep, you might get stuck in a traffic jam, but you can get there. How do you make the argument for rail filling that need and doing so in a way that is affordable to the commuter, the consumer?
Yeah, great question. You know, certainly nobody is advocating replacing cars or replacing highways. Those are obviously important elements of transportation. But what we've actually seen recently, and I think members of our generation have seen this, is people want to live in cities. They want to live in downtown areas. People want to live close to culture, close to nightlife, close to where they're working, where they're shopping, where they're, etc. And so what you've seen is actually a shift over to sort of multi-noded forms of transportation. So whereas people used to just drive from point A to point B, now people might take an Uber, they might do a bike share, they might take a train, they might take a bus, or all of the above. And so we don't want to get left out of that. Because if you look at cities like Springfield, areas like Western Mass that have had pretty successful transitions from an industrial economy to an innovation-focused economy, they've done a few things. One big thing that they've done is they've better connected and integrated their transportation. Portland, Maine, neighbor of ours, good example of integrated car, bike, bus, train service. Mm-hmm. Providence, Rhode Island, another good example, has done a lot to increase their public transportation and their rail. Northern Indiana, South Bend, right. Indiana, another example. So that we can learn from those places.
But is there a price point here at which point, you know, you build this, you get high-speed rail, at what point is it advantageous for the commuter to take it if they're having to pay, you know, 20, 30, 40 right. bucks for a ticket? We go back a couple decades when trains were everywhere, you know, it was an affordable commuting option. People look at it now as not so affordable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you touch on a good point, which is that it has to be reliable, it has to be safe, and it has to be affordable. And so that's what we need to get our hands around in this feasibility study. And one of the things I wrote into the legislation that would call for this study is it has to do two things. It has to look at what the costs are going to be and give a very honest and thorough appraisal of that. We also need to look at what the benefits are going to be. what will this do to property values? What's this going to do for business opportunities, for employment opportunities? So you're right. We have to take the whole picture in, and we should only move forward with it if we think that the cost and benefit calculation makes sense. We have to apply that metric to everything we do.
But you realize the risk, I'm assuming, of putting this as like you want the answers, but what happens if you don't like the answers that come back? I mean, what happens if it is then
that's life. Yeah, I mean that's I think we've overheated politics to such an extent that we view kind of inclusion of opposing viewpoints or kind of a technocratic analysis of where the data and where the costs are going to be as a bad thing. Maybe I'm a little bit of a nerd, but I view that as a good thing. I've looked at this on my own pretty extensively and over quite a long period of time, and I'm very confident that when a honest and full appraisal of all the costs and all the benefits are looked at, it's going to really come out on the side of this being a really transformative and powerful tool for us in Western Mass. If we get the feasibility study through and the Department of Transportation looks at it all, studies all the elements, does a thorough analysis and says, now is not the time, or the costs don't exceed the benefits, that's okay. There's, what I would hope then though is that there will be recommendations for other things that we can do instead. So you have to be prepared for that, or you shouldn't undertake the process.
Which is a good point to wrap up on. Aside from rail and aside from high-speed rail, what do you see as some of the key things necessary for economic success in Western Mass and the Springfield area? Where's our road to the future?
Yeah, great question, Noah. There's a lot that we need to be working on. One is high-tech manufacturing. We're a traditional center of high-tech manufacturing. The Armory was here. We have a proud tradition of making things in Western Mass. Right now we have a massive skills gap. Our local employers are desperate for good talent in this field. This is a field that can pay $50,000 to $75,000 a year with a 10, 12-week training program. We've got to beef that up. That's been a big focus of my attention, more vocational training, more high-tech manufacturing training, things like CAD, CAM, CNC machining. Another big area of focus we can't lose sight of is the cultural economy. Tourism is the third largest industry in Massachusetts, employs the third highest industry both by revenue and by employment, and especially in Western Mass, we have a lot to work with. We're going to have a lot happening in Spring for the next few years. New casino opening, the Dr. Seuss Museum opening. We, of course, have the Hall of Fame, Six Flags. We need to leverage those assets and work on getting more visitors and getting more cultural development programming in as well. So we can talk at length about a lot of these, but you raised the broader point, which is, again, if you think about what we need to do to be competitive, if you think about what we need to do as a region to stay ahead, I think there's three key things we need to do. We need to improve our connectivity and our transportation. That's through rail. We need to break down the silos between our educational institutions and our employers. That's the voc tech, the manufacturing work. And we need to infuse and develop our downtowns and give people some pride of place and some excitement about being in Western Mass, which is a great location. We need to get the word out about that, and that's through the cultural work.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you coming into the office, and appreciate those who joined in to watch us, and hope to have you back soon.
Thanks, Noah. I appreciate it.
Thanks.